Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn with Action Coach. It's great to have you with us. Start of another week, start of another month for many of us at the beginning of October. It's good to also welcome James Bolle from Purposeful. Hello, James. How are you?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
Good. Well, it's great to have you with us on this lunchtime Lunch and Learn webinar. And we'll come back and talk a bit about what you do, and you're going to talk a lot more about purpose today. So we're looking forward to listening to what you've got to share with us. For those listeners who are with us for the first time today, you may well be logged into our Zoom platform. So if you are, please do put any questions and answers in the Q&A box. And we're also broadcasting live on Facebook. And so if you're listening to us on Facebook this lunchtime, first of all, it'd be nice to give us a like or a love heart if you're here for the second time, if you're a second repeat offender. But if you're here for the first time, please do like, comment, share, and put any questions and comments on this Lunch and Learn webinar in the comments box. We'll make sure my colleague Emily, who's monitoring that, will make sure we try and respond to you as we go along. It's great to have James with us, and James, just put your contact details on the screen. Now we're going to be talking all about purpose, but James, just want to introduce a bit about what you do at Purposeful first of all.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. We inspire leaders and people in general to discover purpose so they can love their work and lead more fulfilling lives. We do that through a one-off consultancy service, and we have been doing that since the beginning of 2019. Our specialism is working with small organizations, so we do help some individuals as well, and we'll be talking about both in our presentation today. You can find out our thought leadership content, download some white papers from our website, which is purposeful.com, prpsfl.com. We decided to spell the word purposeful without any vowels to try and make it look a little bit more exciting. And you can email me at any time at james@purposeful.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is James Bolle, or you can book a call directly in my diary at purposeful.as.me. So please do get in touch, because I'd like to hear not just kind of what's bothering you and whether I can help, but also what you thought of today's webinar and any queries or comments you have on that.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And we'll make sure we bring those details up at the end. And if this is your first time connecting with us here at Action Coach, we are a business coaching organization. We look after and work with business owners of all sizes, all shapes, and all industries, looking at how business owners can get more time, more out of their team, and ultimately make more of a return in their business to help grow the business and drive it forward, particularly these difficult, challenging times. And we've been working with organizations right through the lockdown period, not just to help them survive, but help them to thrive going forwards. And we'll touch again on that at the very end. But what can you expect from these Lunch and Learn webinars? Well, we hope that most of all, you'll have that light bulb moment. We at Action Coach call it the BFO, the blinding flash of the obvious. And there may be things that either myself or James, you've heard us say before, heard somebody else say before, but sometimes you need to hear those things several times. Sometimes it's about connecting bits of information in your mind that you've heard, not quite sure how to apply in your business, or you're hearing today in a different context. So we do sincerely hope you have a light bulb moment today, a BFO, and if you do, please just share it with us in the comments box, in the questions box. Let us know what you're thinking about what's being said today. But James, we're talking today about purpose, and I was saying to you earlier on, it always takes me back to a job interview I had probably 8 or 9 years ago, and one of those really obscure questions in the interview that was asked of me is, when you die, what do you want put on your gravestone? And it sort of really took me back to think about actually, what is my purpose, and how do I want to remember it? What is my reason for being here? What sort of legacy do I want to leave behind to those who I've sort of been in contact with? And I didn't really come up with the best answer, I'm sure, at the interview, but it got me thinking afterwards, and I sort of did a bit of research, and I came across this lovely quote, and your life is made up of 2 dates and a dash, usually on the headstone. Make the most of the dash. And I think it's just a lovely way just to think about, well, what are we going to do with that dash between the moment we're born and the moment we leave this world, and what is our purpose and why are we here? And so, James, I think that's a great way just to lead into what you've got to share with us today, about personal purpose, in terms of why are we here, what do we want to do, and what drives us every single day.
Yeah, that's a brilliant introduction. And like most dashes, life is over all too quickly. So it's something to bear in mind, I think, every day as you go along. And I'm my screen and tell you a little bit about me, and then we're going to focus on personal purpose and organizational purpose. So let me
absolutely, no, that's great. There we are.
There we go.
our listeners can
Stephen,
see
do you
your
let me
screen.
know?
That's great.
Can you
Over
see
to
my
you, James.
presentation view? So you should be able to see two little girls dressed up as robots in a pink circle.
Yeah, I saw them on LinkedIn at the weekend. Great image.
Yes.
Great image.
Yeah, we won some socially distanced lockdown fancy dress costumes with those costumes. It was an inspired way to reuse some old boxes. But I put it up as an illustration, really. So a little bit about me. I did a BSc in maths, operational research, statistics and economics in the year 2000. And I can remember the day in 1998 when I decided I wanted to be a market researcher. I became the first ever person in the world to profession. And then in 2007, I did an MBA where I learned a lot more about how business operated in general, and started to become interested in strategy and how kind of businesses function. And it was through my MBA that I met my my next boss who got me into the world of customer experience. He seduced me by offering me lots of data to play with. At the time, they were working with a high street chemist who received 1.5 million completed customer surveys a year, which is very exciting to somebody with my maths and statistics and market research background. And in my time in customer experience, I came to realize that customer experience was about an awful lot more than just collecting surveys. And the question I was asked most often is, how do we improve our customer experience? The answer to that question normally went back to, what do you stand for as a brand? And how do you demonstrate that to your customers through how you treat them? And so I became fascinated by this idea of purpose. What do you stand for as a brand? And then how do you bring it to life throughout your organization? And how do you enable people to be excited by that purpose? How do you enable individuals to understand their purpose and how it aligns with an organizational purpose? And in 2019, I started my business, Purposeful, in order to help people answer those questions, because I think they're key to happy work and successful businesses. But this is a picture of my two daughters, my family. And I see a lot of people say something like this in presentations, which is, I started my business in 2019 and we help organizations discover purpose. But here's a picture of my daughters. They're really my why. They're why I get out of bed in the morning. They're why I do what I do. It's the idea of providing for them that keeps me going every day and gets me excited and helps me to persevere when times are tough. And I'm afraid to say, it just gets my goat when I see people doing that. It may resonate with you, and like me,
it's the most common answer, James, when I say to clients, what is your purpose? Why did you set your business up? And more often than not, when we drill down, it comes back to the children. And it's often trying to move away from that, because we all have that same answer, don't we? It's the most common response whenever I ask that question. What is your why? What's your purpose for having the business? It comes back to family.
Yeah, absolutely. And it resonates. I've seen it so often in networking groups and in webinars, and unfortunately, the evidence is that your family probably inspires you, but actually isn't your why. And this is Simon Sinek, picture of Simon Sinek smoldering at us. And he said with his co-authors in the follow-up to his book, Start With Why, which is called Find Your Why, the bottom line is your family is not your why. Providing for your family is an outcome of you successfully following your why. But actually, if you look a little bit deeper, what you tend to find is the reason why providing for your family is important to you and the way you choose to do it tells you a lot more about your purpose in the world than just having a family. Now, from my own point of view, my kids do motivate me. Like, I want my children to grow up as balanced adults contributing to society, and getting food on the table for them is kind of a given. I mean, unfortunately, there are kids in the world that don't get enough food and whose parents don't care for them. But for most parents, getting food on the table for your kids is kind of a given. What you need to think about is, what's the contribution you are making to the world in order to do that? And it's that really motivates you day to day, and providing for your children will keep you going, and you will do something without purpose to feed your children. But feeding your children in and of itself isn't actually the purpose. And when you are running your own business or a leader of a team, it's definitely not something that's suitable for the organization. And so those are the questions that I'd really like to examine today, if that's okay. Just get my keyboard over here so I can actually change the slides. What is personal purpose? How is that different from organizational purpose, and what's the relationship between the two? And really, I mean, all of the best webinars I've ever been to have had somebody saying something that is blindingly obvious, but has awakened something in me. So I'd love to talk about what to do about these two concepts and how to bring them together, hopefully in aim of giving you a blinding flash of the obvious.
Yeah, I was going to say, just thinking as you're talking there, I guess the challenge is, as you start a business and grow the business, it's separating personal purpose from the organizational purpose, because many solopreneurs, as they start the business, it's very much one and the same, but it's as the business grows, separating them out.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, what I'm going to do today is talk about some techniques that you can use to reveal kind of that purpose and drive greater levels of fulfillment and motivation for yourself as an individual within your business, but also for your team members. And what's really exciting about purpose is how it can be used to drive differentiation for your business and capture you an unfair share of voice and really make you stand out from your competitors. So there are lots of benefits to purpose that we'll go into. So does that sound all right with you, Stephen?
Sounds absolutely perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. And I will be leaning on you a little bit for your experience working with kind of your coaching clients to see kind of what the typical kind of answers you get from them are. So should we go?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
Okay. So first of all, the question is, so what is personal purpose? Now, Simon Sinek calls it a why. Other people might call it my reason for being. There's lots of language around this, but ultimately, what is it? If it's not caring for my family, it is how you behave and what you are doing when you're at your best and you're most fulfilled. Using a definition from Richard Leider's book, Purpose, it's the essence of who you are and what makes you unique. And I like to think of it as this idea of the contribution that you make to the world just by existing. If you like, Stephen, it is the content of the dash between the two dates. It's internal, it comes from within you, but it has an impact externally in terms of what you give to others and what you give to society and what your worth is just through doing what you do. And it typically is this combination of your strengths, your characteristics, your values, and the impact that you make on others. What it is not is your job, your business, your possessions, your wealth, or providing for your family. It goes deeper than that and is much more looking at kind of your internal strengths and characteristics.
Yeah, I guess picking up on that. I mean, I guess it's what makes you really come alive. Going back to that gravestone analogy, what really drives you and makes you come alive every day. And when I've talked purpose to other people, I've yet to find anybody who can measure purpose in possessions. It's much greater, isn't it, than possessions? It's how will you measure purpose? It's never the things in your drive, the cars on your drive, or the possessions in your house. It's something much bigger than that.
Exactly. And some people do use the number of cars on their drive and the value of those cars as a way of keeping score to see if they're doing well. But the aim in a game is not to get the highest score, but it's to win the game and play it well. So it's absolutely fine. If you love cars, you want to get a Maserati, more power to you if you achieve it. But having the Maserati isn't what drives you and makes you different. And that's really kind of, I'd be really interested in your opinion here, Stephen. So when I talk to people about what drives them, what their purpose is individually, the 5 most common purposeless purposes that I get told are, I'm doing this because I want to provide for my family. I'm doing this because I want to make a load of money. And often that is then accompanied with, and the reason I want to make loads of money is because once I'm rich, I can give it all away and do some good in the world. But really that's not a purpose. To have autonomy, I want to be the best at something. And I think the most kind of illusory one, which is, I'm doing this because really I just want to be happy in my life. Now, all of these things are obviously important to different degrees, but each of them, I would say, is a signifier, not the end goal in and of itself. And so, Stephen, I'd kind of be interested in your opinion on this kind of, what people say their whys are.
Absolutely. I think when I talk to many business owners and ask them, why did you set your business up? The most common answer, I have to say, is what I would call the freedom fighter. They feel they can do something better than somebody else, and that's when I really start to drill down as to what does that better look like? Why is it better?
Yeah.
It often comes down to, sometimes the trigger point is redundancy, or not being able to get a job, which is you may touch on, but it is often coming down to they feel they can do something better in a different way.
Yeah.
And sitting behind that then is sometimes their purpose, that sits behind that. But yeah, it's autonomy or the freedom fighter approach.
Yeah, and we'll talk about. I've got some results from a government survey into why people start businesses a little later, which I think is really relevant and we'll really enjoy going through. But here, I think all of these things at some point have been motivations for me, but none of them gets under the skin of underlying kind of what it is that drives me to do the things that I do. And as somebody who talks to others about their purpose all the time, you might be surprised to learn that I still don't think I've got a perfect encapsulation of what my personal purpose is.
I think, again,
but I've been working.
Sorry, James. The 5 points on the screen are often the answers I get when the shield's still down, before we've really uncovered what's going on beneath the surface. They're the stock answers you can give to to if you really don't want to get to reveal what's going on below the surface, dare I say.
Yeah, that's right. And when I've followed this process myself, what I've discovered is that I have an underlying, overwhelming desire to meddle in things. I believe my purpose is to try and improve things so that society gets a bit fairer. And when I look at the work that I do, I'm a trustee of a charity environment called Suited for Success, which I recommend everybody look at. It's a fantastic organization. I'm an advisor on an advisory board for a social enterprise. I'm starting my own social enterprise. I run my business. The values I'm trying to instill in my children as I raise them, it's all about fairness. And I have a level of arrogance that makes me believe I can interfere in things in order to make them better. And the best way I've got of describing it at the moment is to meddle in things to try and make society fairer. But you can see that's actually got nothing to do with my family or how much money I've got or my autonomy or being the best at something. It's to do with what drives me day to day and the situation in which I'm at my best and finding flow most often. So why should you care personally? As somebody watching this webinar, it's like, yeah, good for you, James. You've got your purpose, but why should I care? Well, as an individual leading a business or as an individual in an organization, you should care personally about purpose because it's what inspires you to get out of bed in the morning, to get excited and to find those flow moments where time just disappears because you're doing something that really matters and that you're really good at. It's how you find fit. If you're looking for a new organization to partner with, to work for, to sell to, how do you know that their values are going to match yours and you're going to have a good fit? That comes from understanding your personal purpose and the type of impact that you want to make. It's about connection with others. People, this was a 2015 study of purpose, but people who were kind of purpose-oriented at work were 50% more likely to report having strong relationships with their colleagues than those that weren't purpose-oriented. Purpose enables you to connect more closely with your colleagues and people that you meet. And finally, in the same study, people who were purpose-oriented were found to be 30% more likely to believe that they're growing personally and professionally through the work that they're doing. So if you personally want to find an environment where you can be passionate, where you fit, make connections with people around you and grow personally, what you should be looking at is purpose. And the reason why, I mean, it's a bit like a jigsaw. The reason why defining your purpose is so important is because if there's a piece missing in the jigsaw, you need to know what shape it is in order to put the right piece in. You can't just force anything in there. It's just not going to fit. It's not going to be right. The jigsaw is going to look a mess. Finding your personal purpose enables you to put that piece of your jigsaw in place and unlock a lot of these other things.
Just about to say, James, each of those four words on the screen really do lock into each other, don't they? And a question I often ask my clients is, where can you add the most value? And it comes to that fit, doesn't it? You know, where can I, if you're working for somebody else or you're working in, you know, in your own organization, where can you add the most value in society? What can your organization, what can you do? And that will often drive the passion, the connection, and they all interlink to each other.
Absolutely. It's Teresa Amabile's book, The Progress Principle. I mean, she's a researcher at Harvard University, but, you know, her summary of all of her work was people are most passionate, get the most sense of fit, feel like they're happiest when they're making progress on something that matters.
Absolutely right.
You need to find something that matters to you, and to do that, you really need to understand your purpose. Now, how do you understand your purpose? You don't create it, you discover it. And I mean, I guess the piece of advice that I would give to my children, or to anyone who was asking me, was try everything, because it's through experimentation that you can discover the things that unlock that purpose. And there was a study recently that showed that too many younger people entering the workforce today are shutting themselves off from different experiences because they feel like it is not in line with their purpose, whereas actually what they should be doing is trying as much as possible, because it's in those kind of chance encounters that you often find something that really sparks your passion. But the way you would discover your purpose is to essentially follow this process. It's gather data of what times in your life you've been in flow, when you've felt most in line with your values, when you've felt like you're making the most impact. Work on the themes within that data, commit to a purpose from those themes, and then refine it as you go, which is, you know, I would say I'm in the refinement stage because I can't decide whether meddling in things is the right phrase for me. But having spent 20 years in work and 15 years in education before that, I've a really clear sense now of, you know, what my impact on others can be when I'm working at my best and when I'm at my most satisfied. So I'm able to find those themes and commit to something. So that's the general process.
Yeah, a question from Paul. James, he's obviously looked at your slide very carefully. Said if he's not quite sure on his purpose, is it okay to sit on the fence? There's a seen your image there. You know, if you're still working that out, do you have to come off one side, fence off one side or the other? I guess is what he's thinking. You know.
Well, I think if you aren't committed yet, then the key is to get off the fence and try some different things. Great because waiting and seeing, I think, is the deathbed regret of many. And that's not. I'm not. It sounds like I'm just kind of pontificating. I have an acquaintance who actually kind of did a study of what were the deathbed regrets of people, and they tended to be, I just wish I'd tried this or I'd done that. So, you know, it's absolutely fine not to be committed, but I would say if you look through your experiences, it probably is there. And one of the things I always say, I mean, I would say this because I am a consultant who helps people discover purpose, but start talking about it with others, because they can often pick out themes that you can't see for yourself, in the same way that, you know, a hairdresser doesn't cut her own hair or his own hair. Sometimes you just have blind spots and you need to talk these things through with other people, and it can help you come up with a statement that you can commit to and then refine, because there might be blinding flashes of the obvious in what you're saying that you just can't see yourself.
So I guess it's just getting the right balance of, you know, having some idea of what your purpose might be, but then reflecting on that with others and not trying to sort of do it all on your own. Is that fair to say, James?
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, so there are lots of different sources that you can use to try and uncover your personal purpose. And they will all give you 80% the same advice with some conflicting points of view. But my 5 favorite questions, so when I'm talking to individuals, and normally when I'm working in an organization, I will do some personal purpose work with the founders, because it's really important to kind of understand that before we set off together. But my 5 favorite questions at the moment are 2 from Richard Jacobs, 2 from Simon Sinek, and 1 that I've definitely stolen from somewhere, but I couldn't remember the reference, so I've not given it one. But first question from Richard Jacobs is, if you were given a microphone now and you were able to broadcast to everybody in the world, they would all hear it and they would all understand what you were saying, because it translated for everyone. you've got to give them a message. Now, go. That's a great question to think about, because if you are delivering a message to the entire world, it normally will uncover something that is important to you. You probably won't tell them work as hard as you can to get as many cars as you can on your workplace, and oh, by the way, I'm really good at accounting, so you should probably use my accounts business. You would probably say something a lot deeper that relates to an underlying purpose that you have in life. This is from his book, The 7 Questions to Find Your Purpose. The next question that he asks that I really like is, imagine you're on a desert island without plentiful food and water supplies and plenty of shelter. There are 1,000 of you there, and a community begins to form. What role do you want to take in that community? That's a really interesting one, because that can uncover some themes of the type of person you are. The arch enemy question is, sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
No, just reflecting myself on your last 2 questions. So you got a microphone with one message across the world, or you're on a desert island. There may be more than one person with the same message, or more than one person wanting to do that role. So how unique is purpose?
So I think purpose is never entirely unique. So I would imagine that there are millions of people in this country alone who want to meddle in things to make society fairer. But the combination of the language that you use about your purpose, allied with your values, your strengths, and your skills, and by strengths I mean your characteristics. I mean it in a kind of psychological sense, rather than what are you good at. Your combination of values, strengths, skills, and your wording and the way you view the world will be unique, and so your unique approach can add value for you as an individual, and you will find other people on the same journey, but they will not use exactly the same language. Now, I mean,
experience that's brought us to that point as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
everyone has different experiences, and everyone perceives those experiences differently. So we all have different reasons. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day who's a senior leader in a massive organization. Asked them the desert island question, and I had assumed that their answer would be, well, I'll be like the chief of the new tribe. And his answer was, well, I'd love to be the chef. I said, why would you love to be the chef? It's like, well, I love cooking. Why do you love cooking? I just love taking that stress away from other people and giving them something that's satisfying and enables them to get on with living their lives better. It's like, wow, so suddenly you're into much deeper territory than than you might expect if you just assumed it. I'll run through the other 3 relatively quickly. The arch enemy question I like in terms of, imagine you are a superhero who is your arch enemy that you're trying to defeat, and then why? Lots of people say something like Boris Johnson, or why Boris Johnson? What does he represent? And then you get under the skin of it, and it's something to do with fairness or unkindness or inequality. You can very quickly get to deeper themes that are important to people. And Simon Sinek, in his book Find Your Why, has got lots of great questions. His 2 favorite ones are, what are the accomplishments that you're really proud of? And again, with some sensitive probing, you can get really under the skin of why people are proud about things that they've achieved because of the impact it's had on others. And what were the occasions when, at the end of the day, you've stopped and thought, actually, I wouldn't even need to get paid to do this. I would do this for free. Kind of really helps you understand when people are in their flow. And I've probably got a bank of about 30 different questions you can throw at people to try and unsettle them and get under the rational response and get to the emotion. But these are my 5 favorite. And if you were to sit down and answer these questions with a friend or with yourself, and won't work as well with yourself, but as long as you probe yourself, sorry, that's a horrible phrase. As long as you prompt yourself to go beneath the obvious, you can get to values and some really important things to tell you about your purpose quite quickly.
Brilliant. That's really helpful.
One of the other questions in Jacob's book, actually, you reminded me of earlier, Stephen, is what 7 words would you have on your tombstone? So, not one that I particularly, not a question that I particularly use, because it can take you down the wrong route or the wrong feeling in terms of morbidity, but it is also a question that people will consider. So I would encourage everyone running a business to understand their personal purpose. And I'll talk in a minute about how personal purpose can relate to organizational purpose and where I think it's most effective. But if you want to unlock that passion, that fit, that connection, that growth, that excitement, I think you need to be able to articulate what your personal purpose is. And then organizational purpose, like personal purpose, it's quite easy to say what it's not. An organization's purpose is not its strategy, it's not its source of competitive advantage or its accrued knowledge in some functional area. It is what you are when you're at your best and the organization is most fulfilled, the essence of who you are and the contribution that you make to the planet. Now, I've defined this, and I'll go into that in a second. But when you are thinking about your business, therefore, you've got your personal purpose. Why does your business exist? Many business owners I talk to, when I say, why did you start your business, will say one of these top 10 purposeless reasons. And these are all taken from this government survey I talked about. So why did you start your business? 42% of people in this government survey of 1,000 entrepreneurs said it was to make money. 29% said it was to have independence or freedom, and 25% said it was to be my own boss. And that, I think, is really relatable for most entrepreneurs.
Yes.
To focus on doing something better. Like, I was fed up in my role that I had to do a load of selling as well as the accounting part. I really wanted to focus on accounting. That was mentioned by 19% of entrepreneurs, and 16% said it was because I had a good idea. 15% was basically it occurred to me that I had the skills to start my own business. And then there's some other stuff about not liking my job, wanting a new challenge, and so on. Only 10% of entrepreneurs in this survey said that they wanted to help others to solve problems. And that is the essence of personal and organizational purpose. It is what you are bringing others. And I'd love your comment on here, Stephen. I think you've already said this is very familiar to you, I think, kind of working with your entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And I always say, that when I ask the question, that the top answers I myself hear when I'm talking with clients every day is either, as I said, that I call it the freedom fighter. Either they've worked for somebody else and feel they can do it better. The other really common one is, particularly when working with the trades, is somebody's gone off and learned a skill or a trade, vocational, and then decide actually they realize they've got the skills to set their own business up rather than working for somebody else.
Yeah,
they are the most common for me.
And this is great, and this is absolutely natural, right? Because change happens when the dissatisfaction with the current situation, combined with your vision of the future, combined with clarity of what you need to do to get to that future, when those things combine and become greater than your kind of inertia, then change happens. And so it makes sense that some of these things would drive you to start your own business. The dissatisfaction, well, my boss was an idiot, or I couldn't find a job, or didn't like my job. That dissatisfaction has to be there in order to make you take the jump and become an entrepreneur, because it's not, in lots of ways, it's not fun being an entrepreneur. It's hard work.
Very lonely. Yeah.
Very lonely. Yeah. Disorienting. You don't know what the right thing to do is. You lose support, and suddenly you have 100 tasks to do, whereas you're used to doing 10. And that's an appeal for some people, but it's also isolating and scary. But you need that sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo, or you're not going to take that leap. The challenge is when you become an entrepreneur, because that dissatisfaction is so high, but the vision of the future isn't really any better defined than, or it'll be a bit different from this because I'll be my own boss. That's where kind of purpose, I think, really becomes important, because purpose, I think, is absolutely vital to being a successful business owner or a successful organization. Now, I define purpose. I'm going to go over this quickly because we've done a session together, Stephen, where I've defined what purpose is and how it works, and I've done that for half an hour. So I'm going to do the next slide in like 60 seconds, if that's okay.
No problem at all.
So we can focus on the new stuff. But purpose it's got 4 A's. It's authentically lived, aspirational, it's a cool organization and its stakeholders that advances others. Authentically lived, purpose without authenticity is just marketing nonsense. Purpose without aspiration is just a mission. It can be inspiring for the short term, but not for the long term. Purpose is what remains when your mission is completed. And when I use the term aspirational here, that's what I mean. It kind of relates to something big, long term, and universal. It's not related to something that you want to become. Call to action, because it needs to drive how people behave day to day, and it needs to suggest a certain behavior, because purpose without action is just a daydream. And finally, advances others, because purpose without advancing others is just selfishness. If you have a purpose with these 4 constituent parts, then you can drive profit. But just writing a purpose statement in and of itself doesn't lead to profit. What you need to do is live it effectively. If you are living it effectively, purpose attracts the right people to your organization. And there are statistics here about millennials choosing jobs based on aligned values with organizations and CSR policies, and how much more loyal people working with purpose are than those who don't. Purpose then aligns people, so they all point in the right direction, and guides their behavior day to day to such a point that they make better decisions and perform better at their job. And the New York University study found perform significantly better in performance reviews. And then they're more motivated, so they're more resilient, they stick at tasks that are difficult for longer, and they're 30% more productive. So when you've got this authentically lived aspirational call to action that advances others, this is what you get. You get profit because you're attracting the right people to the business, aligning them in the same direction, guiding their decision-making day to day, and motivating them to work harder. So much so, and I think this is a relevant statistic for the audience, purpose-led startups are twice as likely to be profitable in their early years than non-purpose-led startups. And then, of course, motivated team members are more likely to promote the organization they work for. Actually, in the same 2015 study I referenced earlier, the employee NPS score of purpose-oriented individuals was 35 points higher than those without purpose, which means they're just much more likely to recommend the place that they work to their friends and family than others. So that attracts more of the same like-minded people, and this cycle forms. This is one reason why it's important.
No, just quick shout out for a book we've been reading fairly recently in our book club, James, The Purpose Revolution, which tackles that key issue around, the millennials and their purpose and what they're keen, trying to get out of employment going forwards. And if you're a business owner out there listening to us today, and I really recommend that book as a starting point to better understand that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great addition. And you know what, this isn't just about the people that might want to work with your organization. It's also about the people that might want to buy from your organization, because there is growing levels of evidence that say that customers choose organizations and products based on what it says about their identity to be associated with it. I mean, it's partly what explains the growth of brands like Patagonia, Tesla. Like, why Tesla make cool cars, but why does somebody want to be associated with Tesla? Why do they buy into the beliefs of that organization and its values so deeply? It's because it unlocks something emotional within them. And that's really then where the power of purpose becomes so much greater. So I'm just going to take a quick drink, excuse me. So, I mean, in terms of, kind of, I referenced this earlier. So purpose is what can enable your brand to stand out in terms of attracting the right people and being a really successful organization. But it's also can help you get much more bang for your buck in terms of brand awareness and standing out from competitors. So I've got 4 statistics that I think really bring that home. First of those is in a study that was done a couple of years ago, the average purpose-led brand had 3.5 times as many followers on social media per employee as non-purpose-led brands. So I'll restate that in a way so it might be easier to understand. You could have 3 to 4 times as many followers per employee as a competitor if you were able to articulate your purpose successfully. And it's about the stories that you tell and the client-centered communications. You can have a much bigger reach in social media than you deserve for your size because of the values and the causes that you espouse. 89% of customers in the Edelman Brand Trust Survey associate purpose with higher quality. So again, compared with an organization that is very similar to yours, if you put your social impact at the center of your communications, you can communicate to customers that you are higher quality than your competitors. Benefit corporations, so B Corps, which is again kind of probably another presentation, but if you want to if you Google B Corp, you'll find out about them. They're basically organizations that have changed their company charter to define a social benefit that they deliver as well as making money. Benefit corporations have much greater brand strength than organizations in similar industries who are not benefit corporations, and that's measured by kind of Millward Brown kind of brand value brands survey. And lastly, I mean, this is a large organization. That's not a great comparison for small organizations, but Unilever quote that they get the biggest bang for their buck, the biggest return on their marketing investment when their marketing and advertising is focusing on some new innovation plus a purpose message. So they've put purpose at the center of their organization, and their purpose-led brands accounted for about 3/4 of their growth over the last few years. But they found that their marketing stands out and cuts through most effectively when it has some product innovation message allied with a purpose message. So by defining your organizational purpose, you can get an unfair advantage in terms of your reach on social media, the cut through and noticeability of your advertising, and really significantly grow the strength of your organizational brand and its perceptions of quality versus your competitors, which I think, even from a from a rational point of view, makes it worthwhile engaging with this.
Yeah, and I'm always reminded of Henry Ford's purpose when he started Ford was to democratize the automobile. You know, it wasn't just to build great cars, but it was that bigger purpose of democratizing and making it accessible to all parts of society.
Yeah.
But often when we're coaching clients, one of the things, we take them back to, before we do anything around sales and marketing and finances, it's what's your purpose, what's your destination, because it feeds into so many different things, as you're saying, James, in terms of your marketing, the people you have on the bus with you, in terms in the organization, having a clear understanding of why you're doing and what your purpose is so important as a business owner.
Absolutely. And the absolute key to it is making sure that it's authentic. It comes from a place of truth. One of the reasons why purpose in some quarters is getting a bad name is because organizations have forsaken authenticity in order to get the message out there. And you might think of Pepsi's famous Kendall Jenner advert from 2017, or the Gillette toxic masculinity ad from 2019, where these brands have been desperate to weigh in with a point of view on a social issue without having done the work to earn the right to talk about it beforehand. And people are cynical about purpose because they think it's just marketing waffle, people trying to trick gullible millennials into trusting and buying from their business. Well, in some cases it is. You have a duty as a business owner to make sure you don't fall foul of that as well. You have to do the groundwork in order to build that authentic reason for communicating that before you communicate it. So how do you discover it? Well, it's exactly the same process as personal purpose, in that you need to gather data, find themes, commit and refine. The difference being, if you've got a team, you absolutely need to make sure that your team is involved in this process. You can't tell everyone else on your organization what purpose they get from your organization. I think once you've started, the genie's out of the bottle, and you need to accept that you will all work together to define that purpose.
I think it's only by purpose being really authentic and actually being, living it and breathing it every day, you can then share it with the people in a way that they want to be on that journey with you. You've got to have a really clear understanding of what it is you're doing. And as you say, James, live and breathe it every single day.
Absolutely. And, the three questions that I think are best for this are all from Synec's Find Your Why. But if you are working with your team and gathering the stories that make everyone proud to work for the organization. So if you've got 5 people on your team, ask them all to gather together the stories of times when they've been most proud to work for your business. Gather yours together as well. Share them all. Examine in those stories which are the most emotionally engaging, and resonant for everyone in the room. Think about the impact you are having on your customers in those stories and the problems that you were solving and what your customers were able to go on and achieve in the world as a result of those problems being solved and the impact that you had. And you will get quite quickly to an emotional core for your business. So rather than being a computer game manufacturer or a computer game developer, it's about building self-esteem of geeks and enabling them to express their geekiness in a community of like-minded individuals. Instead of being a recruiter, you are an organization that shows people you care about them in order to connect them with others and inspire them to be the best that they can. Instead of being a battery manufacturer who happens to put batteries into cars, you will be the organization that's accelerating the world's transition to renewable energy. Instead of being a soap manufacturer, you'll be an organization who's making sustainable living commonplace. These things have a much deeper resonance. Open people's eyes, make them more motivated, make them more innovative, make them more interesting, and make your company more interesting to others. So I really recommend that you go through this process.
Some really great questions to be asking ourselves on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Now, so I've talked about personal purpose. I've talked about organizational purpose. I think it's clear what the difference is. They're both kind of dealing with the same themes, but one is personal to you and one will be related to the organization. If you are an entrepreneur just starting up, I would suggest that your organizational purpose is some subset of your personal purpose. Now, this comes from my observations and my studies. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but if your purpose is to meddle in society or meddle in things in order to make society fairer, necessarily there are thousands of ways that you could do that. The organizational purpose needs to be a little bit more defined than that, and will be a subset. The reason why I think it's a subset is because it's probably, sorry, this is a terrible thing to say, but many new businesses fail. And I think it's really dangerous to have your personal identity and your personal purpose tied up with the organization that you're starting, because if your organization fails, you need to be able to reason that there was a failure of strategy or a failure of product design or a failure of marketing, rather than your identity and your personal purpose not being worthwhile. I think it's really important to have a clear separation from the two, and to understand that the business that you have started is not the only way that you are going to make an impact in society, even as you run that business. It's got to be just a subset of your personal purpose.
Absolutely.
And then,
sorry,
brilliant. No, sorry, I'd like to hear why you agree.
Well, no, I think it's, I think, what you're saying makes complete sense. But I guess, why don't you think personal purpose and organization is the same thing for an entrepreneur? So an entrepreneur, as I said earlier on, starting up a business for the first time, they are going to be one and the same, aren't they? And I guess it's how those two things gradually move apart over time.
Well, I don't think they are exactly the same when they start, because your personal purpose is going to be defined, it's going to be big and it's going to be broad. Your organizational purpose is necessarily going to be a little bit more focused. I don't think someone starts a business to say this business is going to interfere in things in order to make them better. I guess the Virgin Group, their purpose is to change business for good, is broad enough, and that might be Richard Branson's purpose as well. But I think, I think that an individual's business that they start is typically an expression of some part of their personal purpose and some part of their personality, rather than the exact replication of it. I think maybe a small one-person coaching business might be different. You might argue, that Simon Sinek's personal purpose is exactly the same as his corporation's purpose, or was to start with. But I certainly think it changes over time.
Yeah.
Now, I would argue, don't make them perfectly overlap, because that is a way to add too much pressure to yourself.
I guess what I'm hearing you say as well, James, is your organization mustn't be the only vehicle to deliver your personal purpose.
That's a much better way of putting what I was just trying to say. Yeah. Thank you. and then, you know, if you are an entrepreneur and you've been going for a couple of years, you need to retrofit your purpose. Typically, your organizational purpose is what sits at the center and overlaps a little bit with the personal purpose of everybody in the organization. Certainly, they will all be able to find some connection to it, but your organizational purpose almost becomes like the center of gravity around which everyone orbits, and everyone's not in exactly the same orbit, but everyone does orbit and does get connected with it somehow.
And I guess for entrepreneurs and those who start their own business or growing their business is finding other people that are going to gravitate, that have a similar set of values, purpose, why to come and work for that organization, which is why it's so important to have a really clear understanding of what it is and the kind of people you want on board. That's
exactly right. And it's kind of, it works like a strange gravity, because it's not like Newtonian gravity where a large object has the same pull on every other object. It only attracts some people and not others. And that kind of, as you say, by defining it and exerting that pull, it can get really, really exciting, but it's not going to apply to everybody. And that's great. You don't need it to. Right, so I'm going to do 5 minutes now of so what, and then hopefully there'll be a couple of questions that I can answer. But so what should you do? So as a business owner, I think you have a responsibility for understanding your own purpose, because that's what's going to keep you going, and for working with your team or working alone to define your organizational purpose, because it attracts the right people and has the effect that we talked about. You've probably heard of the phrase ikigai, which is the Japanese concept of your reason for being. You've defined your purpose. Your role as a leader is to now define your strategy so that it overlaps effectively with your purpose. So in Ikigai, you're looking at the crossover between what you love doing, what the world needs to be done, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. When you are defining your purpose, I think ignore what you're good at and what you can be paid for, because it leads you to focus too much on the here and now and what's possible, and you need to be thinking bigger than that. But once you defined your purpose, i.e. what you love and what the world needs, the impact you're going to make, your role as a leader is to define a strategy that takes your skills and your accrued knowledge and your network and all of the value that you've got in that, and find a product or service that you can get paid for, that means that you can operate in the center of this Venn diagram, where you are operating in complete congruence with what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. And so that is leadership. Lesson number one is define your strategy so that it's congruent to your purpose. And then number two, and this comes from the Oxford University Said Business School's Enacting Purpose initiative. They classify 5 areas where you as a leader should look to make your purpose live. And the first is, can you simplify your purpose to such an extent that everyone in the organization can get something from it? So that is, can you help your people find that red thread between the job that they do and impacting on the overall purpose? Can you express it in a way that makes it understandable to the VA who is working with you to answer your phones and answer your emails? Can you express it to him or her in a way that they understand that they can make the right decisions for your business, as much as kind of it guides you yourself? Connect your strategy to it, which we've just talked about, and connect your investment decisions to fulfilling your purpose. Drive ownership of the purpose. Take ownership for it yourself, but also encourage everyone else in the organization to take ownership of delivering that purpose. And then find ways to reward people for purposeful behavior, as well as the behaviors that keep the business going, because in the long term, it's the purposeful behavior that's going to differentiate you and make you successful. I will throw in a caveat there, because making something that's intrinsically motivating an extrinsic reward is psychologically dubious ground. So be careful how you do it, but do make sure that you are noticing things that people are doing right that further the purpose, and praise them for doing so. And find stories that exemplify your purpose. Find ways to show what your purpose means day to day and make sure that that's lived. And some great stories. I worked with a commercial vehicle retailer whose managing director tells a great story about one time they went to their van depot where they were thinking about buying a consignment of Renaults or something, and found somebody in the uniform of one of their customers and just said, "What are you doing here?" They brought a van in for a service, not a van that he'd sold to them, but just a van. Just like, "Oh, what are you doing now?" "I'm just waiting for an Uber to take me back to the office." So the managing director said, "While I'm here, cancel the Uber, hop into my car." And the managing director of this commercial vehicles retailer drove a very low-level employee from one of his customers back to depot 15 minutes away, because while I'm here, you're a customer, I can help you. This business is all about helping our customers to achieve what they need to achieve. So I'm obviously going to put myself out to do that. That story exemplifies what that purpose is about much better than kind of anything that's written on the wall or any edict he could pass down, and really helps, when you're thinking of a vehicle retailer, you might be thinking of people trying to sell you a finance scheme you don't need and make money out of you that way. This organization has got great stories about putting the customer's needs front and center. So that's the type of story you need to find.
It's a great way of turning a customer into
and then absolutely, and it's completely congruent with your purpose. I mean, I love that. I think most of the entrepreneurs and leaders listening to this call can probably think of examples of things they've done because, well, it just makes sense. Why wouldn't I do that? That are actually fantastic stories that they can embed in their culture for what their organization is about. And then lastly, you need to be the guardian of living your purpose with congruence. So you need to have a complete alignment between what you intend, which is your purpose, and then how you act. So what do you measure? How do you measure success? How do you treat your customers? I mean, that from my point of view is absolutely the key. Your customer experience has to be the proof to your customers that you're living your purpose. How do you treat the people within your organization, the humans that you work with? What products and services do you offer? And how do you govern your business via the SCORE framework? And then lastly, what do you say? And this is the last key point I'd like to make, which is clearly you cannot discover a purpose and then go out and say to the market, my purpose is this, therefore you need to buy from me. If you were a comedian, you wouldn't go on stage and spend half an hour telling everyone how funny you are. You would go out and tell them jokes. As an entrepreneur, as a leader, you need to get up on stage and show everyone how your organization is living your purpose and how that's benefiting others and solving their problems. And then you will get the credit that you deserve. People will come along with you. Put customer-centered stories based on your purpose at the center of your communication strategy. Once you can authentically talk about them, you will get an unfair share of voice and you'll get unfair attention and you will grow and you will succeed. But make sure it's got that congruent base of what you intend and how you act before you start talking about it, because otherwise people will see through it.
Brilliant. There's a couple of questions on it, James. I don't know if we've got time for them. Conscious.
Yeah, I'm good as long as you are. Sorry,
no,
I went maybe 15 minutes longer than I intended.
Yeah, no, I mean we'll try and keep it to the hour, but just I've got a couple of questions from Simon. One from Simon, one from Claire, which I think is worth asking. So Simon's saying the best way to reevaluate his organization's purpose, should he start with him or should he start with the team in the organization?
I would always start with the founder, particularly if there's more than one, because you need to make sure that the founder's intents are compatible before you start engaging with the team. So look within first, think about your origin story, why you started the business. Patagonia, think about Yvon Chouinard, who started that business because he was a climber and he was fed up of leaving metal stuff in mountain faces. He thought, this isn't good for the environment. It's expensive for me. I'm going to solve this problem. 30 years later, he's got a $1 billion outdoor apparel manufacturer based on the same principles of let's do as little damage to the environment as possible, make stuff that lasts, that people can reuse. Look within yourself. What's your origin story? How does that express itself through the organization? Understand that, make sure you're comfortable with it, and then move forwards with the team. If there's more than one founder in the organization, make sure you've got broadly the same values or before you start engaging the team with it.
Absolutely. Aligning at the top before going down, I guess, is what you're you're saying, James. The other question, really interesting, actually, one from Claire. Thank you, Claire, for tuning and listening this lunchtime. Looking to invest in a new opportunity, should you put purpose or profit first?
She should, well, firstly, the two aren't mutually exclusive. And there are lots of investors at the moment who are discovering that by investing along ESG lines, which is environmental, societal, governance lines, rather than pure profit lines, they're actually making a better return in the medium to long term. So I would say do your due diligence on the investment opportunity and the impact that they are having environmentally, socially, and how they govern their business with transparency and in terms of including their team members and doing a good job there. Because if they've got their ducks in a row on those things, then it's probably a good investment financially. So yeah, I would say put purpose first because it will lead to profit. And yeah, if you'd like to connect afterwards, I can share information about the ESG investment trends that kind of provide evidence for that point of view.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And hopefully, Claire, that gives you the start of an answer. Both Simon's and Claire's questions are ones that I'm sure can be explored in a lot more detail given more time, which is why it's great that you're open to being contacted, James. If anybody wants to contact you after this webinar, then please do get in contact with James. I'm sure as I've had many conversations with James, you can the conversation can go off in so many different ways, but it's good to have that exclusive time to sort of go through those queries you may have in more depth rather than just trying to answer them in a short space of time on the webinar. But thank you for starting the questions and sharing them with us. All of those who've shared questions this lunchtime, it's great to have you with us. James, I know we're conscious of time. Is there anything else you wanted to add just before we round things up?
Yes, there's one more thing, Stephen, which is thank you very much for an interesting conversation. Again, I always find these sessions, whether I'm presenting in them or attending them, really valuable. So thank you for having me on and keep up the good work.
I know it's great to have you as part of the team here supporting clients and our listeners, James, and I know you're coming back later again towards Christmas to sort of take the conversation further, but it's great to have you with us and we really appreciate you giving your time up this lunchtime. I just wanted to shout, I mentioned it to you before we started, James, that I was on a webinar myself or a workshop last week and Marshall Goldsmith was presenting, and I think it just links it back to what we're saying, in terms of what you've learned and what you've heard this lunchtime to those with us, just on a daily basis, just think about, did I do my very best? Just have that check-in with yourself, today, as you come to the end of your first day of the week, have you got clear goals? Have you achieved your goals? But the third point there, have you found, or are you still working towards creating your purpose? And do you have that in the forefront of your mind? And there's various other checkpoints there. And I just think it's really important to check in with ourselves, to check in with our purpose, to check in with where we are going, what we're trying to achieve. And importantly, are we happy in doing what we're doing? Is it fulfilling and rewarding? Because if that answer is no, then absolutely have we still got the purpose we set out with, or are we on the same journey that we want to be on? So it's great words from Marshall there, and I think it's worth reflecting on a regular basis. But for now, just to finish off, thank you again, James, for being with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all of those who've been with us for the full hour. We've just gone over the hour, but it's great to have you with us. This webinar will, of course, be available on our website, and on James, we're going to send it to you, so it's on your website as well. Your contact details are there on the screen for anybody who wants to take the conversation further. Absolutely recommend picking up the phone, dropping an email to James, get in touch with him, and you won't regret having that purposeful conversation about yourself and your organization, and how you can sort of, refocus if you need to, or drive your purpose forwards within the organization and making sure you're reconnecting with it yourself. But for now, thank you, James, for everything you've shared with us. We look forward to joining us again. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Hope you have a brilliant week full of purpose, and everything you do each day sort of, comes back to that question of why. But for now, James, thank you so much, and we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye now.